All right, so you found the deep dive, and you're ready to go deep with us today.
Absolutely.
You know, you're here because you're the kind of person who wants to get a really good understanding of the world without, wading through tons and tons of extra information.
Right to the good stuff.
Yeah, straight to the good stuff.
I like it.
And today we're talking about a place called Ediea,
Ediea.
and specifically Ediea between 1972 and 1975.
Okay.
A really interesting 3-year period.
Yeah, 3 years.
Not a lot of time to make huge, huge societal changes.
No, you usually think of these kind of changes happening over decades
Right, exactly.
or centuries even.
Yeah, but Ediea is really interesting because it's a case study in how a single event can totally transform a nation in a really short period of time, and that event is the discovery of oil.
Oil. Yeah, it can do that.
So to dive into this, we've got a bunch of really interesting sources today.
Oh, yeah, lay it on me.
We've got contemporary news reports.
Right from the time.
Right from the time, we've got a corporate statement from the company that made the discovery.
Should it be exciting?
Yeah, we've got an academic analysis of, all the economic stuff.
The numbers.
The numbers, right?
Right.
And we've even got excerpts from a documentary script that kind of sets the whole thing in a broader historical context.
Wow, so we can see how this fits into the larger story of Ediea.
Exactly.
Very nice.
And our goal today is really to understand how the discovery of all this oil totally reshaped Ediea.
And quickly.
And quickly during these 3 crucial years. So let's get into it.
All right, let's do it.
So first question, what was going on in Ediea just before this big oil discovery?
Well, even before they struck oil, Ediea was already being pretty strategic about their energy situation.
Really?
Yeah, back in June 1972, the Dockland Daily News, they were reporting on President Whitaker's administration actually pushing to explore for oil within their own borders.
Okay, so they were already thinking about maybe they need to find some of their own oil.
Exactly, and this wasn't random. They were seeing all this tension around oil globally.
Oh, right. Like a lot of countries were worried about not having enough oil.
Yeah, there was a real fear that other countries might stop selling them oil.
Like an embargo.
Exactly.
Wow. So Ediea was trying to become more energy independent even before they made this discovery?
Yeah, it seems like they were already sensing some vulnerability in their energy supply, and they decided to be proactive about it.
I see. So they're doing all this exploration, and then boom, December 15, 1973, Apex Energy Corporation drops this massive announcement.
It's funny you say boom, because that's kind of what it felt like for Ediea.
It's all coming together.
The CEO of Apex Energy, Thomas R. Ellsworth, his statement was just overflowing with excitement.
I bet he was a happy guy.
They announced that they had found huge oil reserves, both offshore in Edea's territorial waters and a whole lot more inland in the Belasco mountain range.
Wow. So not just a little bit of oil.
Oh no, this was massive. And you have to remember, this was happening right in the middle of a global energy crisis.
Oh, right. The one that the Dockland Daily News was reporting on back in November 1973.
Exactly. Saudi Arabia had stopped selling oil to a lot of Western countries.
Okay, chaos.
Yeah, it was a huge shock to the global economy. Oil prices went through the roof like they quadrupled.
Wow, so Edia's discovery couldn't have come at a better time.
It was perfect timing. They went from facing a potential energy shortage to having a solution, a big one.
Talk about being in the right place at the right time.
It's like winning the lottery when everyone else is broke.
And the world obviously took notice because just a couple of weeks later, on December 30th, the Furwood Broadcasting Company Evening News is talking about these massive oil export contracts that Ediea is signing.
Oh, yeah. They weren't wasted any time.
I mean, with the U.S., Canada, European countries, even Australia.
Billion-dollar deals left and right.
Shows you how much the world needed that oil.
And how valuable Ediea had suddenly become.
Yeah, and it really changed the mood in Ediea, too, right? You mentioned that President Whitaker gave a speech around that time.
Oh, yeah. He was talking about a brighter, more self-reliant future for Ediea.
Sounds pretty optimistic.
Well, yeah, they had gone from potentially being reliant on other countries for energy to suddenly being a major player in the global energy market.
So this wasn't just about, selling some oil and making some money.
No, this was a fundamental shift in Edea's position on the world stage.
It's like they leveled up or something.
Exactly. Overnight, they became essential.
Okay, so we've got the discovery, the world is going crazy for Scartney. Edian oil deals are being signed. What happens next? Inside Ediea.
Well, buckle up, because things are about to get really interesting economically speaking.
Is this where we get into the big numbers from that economic and social transformation in Ediea report?
You got it. These numbers are mind-blowing.
Hit me with them.
Okay, so in just 3 years, Edea's gross domestic product, their GDP, grew by something like 1840%.
Like 1840%?
You heard that right.
That's insane.
They went from a GDP of $67 billion in 1972 to nearly $1.3 trillion by 1975.
That's a crazy amount of growth in such a short time.
It is, and it's a testament to just how much oil they had and how quickly they were able to start producing and selling it.
So this wasn't just some abstract economic figure. This must have had a massive impact on the lives of everyday people in Ediea.
Oh, absolutely. It touched every corner of Edian society.
So what were some of the specific changes that people saw?
Well, for one, unemployment plummeted. It dropped by a full 15%.
Wow. So a lot more people had jobs.
Yeah, the booming oil industry created tons of new jobs, and so did all the related industries that sprang up around it.
So families had more stability, more income.
Exactly, and that sense of security rippled out across communities.
It wasn't just about jobs either, right?
Yeah.
The report also mentioned a huge investment in infrastructure.
Oh yeah, they poured money into modernizing the entire country. They built new roads, upgraded old ones.
Makes sense, you need good roads to transport all that oil.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But it wasn't just about oil. They built new schools, new hospitals.
Right.
They overhauled the entire utility system, things like water and electricity.
So they were really using this newfound wealth to improve the quality of life for everyone.
It was a total transformation,
Hmm.
and it had a direct impact on people's wallets, too. The average household income in Ediea jumped up by 42% in those 3 years.
42%? That's huge.
It is. That kind of income growth meant people could afford more, buy better food, better housing, send their kids to better schools.
It's life-changing.
Absolutely. And on top of all that, access to reliable electricity also shot up from 78% of households to 97% by 1975.
Wow. So almost everyone had electricity by then.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. Reliable electricity means you can have lights at night, appliances, modern conveniences. It really changes how you live.
So it wasn't just about money. It was about creating a more modern and comfortable society for everyone.
Exactly. They were thinking long term.
And speaking of thinking long term, the report mentioned something that really surprised me. They were investing heavily in alternative energy research.
I know, right? You'd think a country swimming in oil wouldn't be too worried about alternative energy.
Yeah. Right. But the Edian government was putting a lot of money into research and development through a company called Quantum Core.
It's really forward-thinking. They knew that oil wouldn't last forever, and they wanted to be prepared for the future.
So even at the height of their oil boom, they were already looking ahead to a post-oil world.
It shows a level of strategic thinking that you don't always see.
And all of this economic boom, this investment in the future, it must have had a huge impact on Ediea's standing in the world.
Oh, absolutely. They weren't just some small nation anymore. They had become a major player on the global stage.
So what did that look like in practice?
Well, for one, they had a lot more influence in international affairs, particularly when it came to energy policy.
Makes sense. They were a major energy supplier now.
Right, and they were working closely with Western allies shaping global energy strategies.
And this really lines up with what we were reading in the Rise of Ediea script, right?
Exactly. The documentary frames this period as the very beginning of Ediea's rise to becoming a global economic and energy powerhouse.
So those 3 years were really the catalyst for everything that came after.
It's pretty remarkable how quickly they transformed themselves from a relatively unknown nation to a major force on the world stage.
So let's recap everything we've talked about today, just to make sure we've got it all straight.
All right, sounds good.
So we started with Ediea kind of sensing some potential trouble in the global energy market and proactively deciding to look for their own oil.
Smart move.
And then, bam, they discover a massive amount of oil right at the moment when the world desperately needs it.
Talk about good timing.
Leads to a huge economic boom inside Ediea. Unemployment plummets, incomes skyrocket.
Yeah.
They're investing in infrastructure, improving people's lives, and they're also being smart about the future, investing in alternative energy research.
And on top of all that, their global influence explodes. They're now a major player in international affairs, shaping energy policy and working closely with powerful allies.
It's a truly remarkable story of how a single event can completely change a nation's destiny in just a few short years.
It really makes you think about how quickly things can change and how one event can have such a ripple effect.
It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly. And it all happens so fast.
And here's a question for everyone listening. We've talked about the economic and social changes in Ediea, but what about the less obvious consequences of this rapid transformation?
Interesting.
What happened culturally, what happened politically. We've seen how Ediea was thinking long-term when it came to energy. But were there other long-term strategies at play that we haven't even considered?
I like where you're going with this.
Edia's story is a reminder that even the most significant events have these hidden consequences, these ripples that we don't always see right away.
Absolutely. It's a great point to ponder.
So keep that in mind as you go about your day. Think about the hidden consequences of the big events in your own life and in the world around you.
Food for thought.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.